So you're a Genshin Impact player. Same. And you're probably wondering if Tower Fantasy is just a Genshin Impact clone, or if you're going to be bored playing because you already play Genshin and you don't want to play another Genshin. I get it. I had the same thoughts when I first downloaded Tower Fantasy's closed beta. And I'm going to do my best today to give you the rundown on these two different games so you can make up your mind as to whether Tower Fantasy is either worth it for you or if you're just going to stick with Genshin. Firstly, yes, they are both gacha games. So depending on your wallet, luck, time commitment, and other various gacha game playing factors, it'll really depend on if you can fit Tower Fantasy into your gaming schedule. Because let's face it, with how much content Genshin gets and the primo grind, there are only so many hours left in the day for other games. They both have battle passes, various rewards and achievements for exploring, vast worlds to actually explore, and an interesting main story and rich lore base to help explain the various things throughout the world. But yet, they are both also two distinctly different games. Let's take a look at the combat. While granted some of the animations may look similar, the power sets have a different dynamic to them. In Genshin, you run around with a squad and the people you play as are the ones with the power, and you just give them whatever weapons you can find that'll help buff their abilities. However, in Tower Fantasy, it's more you run around alone and the weapons are the power sets. Because when you pull in the banners for Tower of Fantasy, you're technically pulling for a weapon and not the people. The person attached to the weapon comes with it as a simulacra, and you can actually run around as them if you want, but otherwise it's just your character on the field switching between weapons. You can have up to 3 weapons on you with 3 different loadout slots, whereas in Genshin Impact it's 4 people in a squad, so 4 power sets, with 4 different loadouts available to you. Both games have various ways to buff and level the abilities of the weapons/characters, but how you roll through them will of course vary from build to build and also game to game. I like the difference between the two and how building out your characters and weapons are going to be different. Tower Fantasy has different mechanics than Genshin Impact in that regard, with Tower Fantasy having matrices and Genshin having artifacts. This will keep combat feeling fresh between the two games, and personally, I can then jump in between and play whatever I want depending on where my brain is at the moment. When it comes to traveling, both have a fast travel system and both have gliders. Well, in Tower Fantasy, it's more of like a rocket boost thing, but it's the same general concept. However, Tower Fantasy has 2 additional things. One being relics that you can equip, which depending on what you equip depends on what it does. There's a turret, you can have a mech that you can ride in, etc. And there are vehicles. That's right, I've got myself a sweet motorcycle and can grind out a variety of other vehicles currently if I want to. Which would make sense as the world so far doesn't feel quite as dense as Genshin does in some ways, so having a vehicle to traverse the areas without fast traveling is really helpful. Also in Tower Fantasy, you can interact with the dogs and cats. I'm just putting that out there. Story-wise, I feel like Tower Fantasy's story feels more personal or central to your character when you first start the game. Whereas with Genshin, you get this big overarching plot feel right away given, well, how the story opens, which gives a really nice variety between the two. Both games, though, have an intriguing and colorful set of characters to interact with, and both starting areas feel like great areas to learn the basics of the game functions in, while still feeling like you're playing the game as opposed to just being in like a tutorial zone. For character customization, it's important to note that with Genshin, you have a set character, either Lumine or Aether, and then various companions you pick up along the way also have their set appearances. We are slowly getting different outfits for some of the characters, but otherwise what you see is what you get. Whereas with Tower of Fantasy, your own character can be customized basically however you'd like within the character creation system, as well as a variety of extra outfits to change them into. And you can change that stuff up even after you get started into the game, making it have a more personalized vibe to it if you're looking for more of a role-playing aspect within the game. Please note, though, that currently you can't change the appearance of a simulacra, just your own personal character. There is, though, an alternate appearance you can eventually unlock for the SSRs. Not to mention the main character voice acting. When it comes to Lumine and Aether, most of the time Paimon does all the talking for us and you very, very rarely talk. Whereas in Tower Fantasy, you actually talk for yourself, which in my opinion is pretty awesome. Let's quickly talk about world spaces. In Genshin, the world is yours unless you invite someone in, so it really doesn't matter if you're a solo player or you want to play with friends, as it's very easy to switch between the two. However, in Tower Fantasy, you're in an instance with other players running around your world. You can't necessarily interact with them like you could in a traditional MMO, as far as I can tell so far, but you can group up to do world bosses, group content as well, and there's even PvP. There's even a world chat feature similar to traditional MMOs. So if you're someone that is a hardcore solo player, this is definitely something to consider before playing. And one final note on this though is that the game does put you in what is called a story instance, and you'll kind of see it briefly pop up on screen when you're doing certain story things, so other players can't come in and interrupt it and ruin your immersion. And lastly, let's talk about Mia versus Paimon. If you've been on stream before, you'll know I'm 100% Team Paimon, and I love her and what she brings to the story with comedic relief, her knowledge, etc. And now we have Mia in Tower Fantasy, who's this AI robot that was fixed up and is now helping you along the way. I don't know a whole heck of a lot about Mia yet, but I will tell you this. She's adorable and has to be protected at all costs. Overall, both games are unique in their own ways, but also similar to each other in others. There isn't going to be a right or wrong as to which game you prefer to play, and you could be like me and actually just play both of them because both are fantastic games. And that's going to be it from me today. Hopefully this helped if you were either trying to decide what game to play or just trying to get a feel for one of these two different games. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next vid. Bye!